Welcome to Do It for the Gram and Enneagram podcast with your host, certified Enneagram coach, Milton Stewart, where we do it for the Enneagram, not Instagram. We make moves to improve our lives and those in our community. As you know, we are in the series of defense mechanisms. This episode is about the Enneagram Type 5 and their defense mechanism. If you haven't checked out the first two episodes I do the interview with Elizabeth Worm, please check those out first. But if you're like, hey, I'm just looking at my type when it pops up, I'm going to listen. It's okay to listen to this one too first. But check those out because they give really, really good insight into breaking down the defense mechanisms as I go into them. So intro music, let's get it. Super excited to announce my new partnership with BetterHelp. This episode is actually sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are struggling, BetterHelp can help. You'll receive 10% off your first month when you sign on using betterhelp.com/do-it. So I'm super excited about this partnership that me and BetterHelp have entered into because in this point where everything that we're doing right now to connect with people is more virtual, it is so important, mental health. I think that aligns perfectly with things that we're trying to do, things that I want to do, and anybody that I would refer or think that could be potentially beneficial to the audience. And I think BetterHelp is definitely one of them. BetterHelp is basically, it's online counseling or therapy. So you're able to actually get some counseling or therapy depending on what's going on from licensed counselors and therapists around the country. And you get to be able to get some of that one-on-one mental checkup that you may need. And BetterHelp's able to help you. So just go to betterhelp.com/do-it and you'll get a 10% discount for your first month. So what are defense mechanisms? Defense mechanisms are really tricky because they go right in line with your ego and your Enneagram type. And so that makes it a little bit harder to notice. Well, actually pretty hard to notice until you start to pay attention to it. And then you can catch yourself doing it. And why is it so important to actually catch your specific primary defense mechanism? Because you can exhibit other defense mechanisms. We all definitely do. But the primary one is the slipperiest one because it is the one that holds you back from actually being able to truly do some deep growth and some deep work. Okay, it really holds you back from connecting and really getting to the area of the passion, which I think I did a series on for each person. So that's like, how do I get to the heart and connect with people? So diving into the Enneagram Type 5's defense mechanism, I'm going to use the Law of Three, which I got this from the narrative tradition and some of the information I'm going to talk about to explain the defense mechanism of the Type 5. The Type 5 structure believes it is knowledgeable and logical as an ideal, okay? So see this as a triangle. We're just at one point right now, okay? And the 5's ego believes it is knowledgeable and logical, all right? Believes it is as an ideal. Now, 5's tend to pride themselves in being very competent, and they tend to lean too heavily into their head center. In order for this idealization of themselves to stay intact, aka the ego structure of the 5 to stay intact, they must avoid incompetency, emptiness, and emotional intensity, okay? So if you believe you are knowledgeable, remember that's one end of our Law of Three triangle, then that means that you avoid, and this is the other end of our triangle, which we're going to do a line across, okay, to the next point. That means you avoid anything that makes you feel incompetent, empty, or things that involve emotional intensity, okay? Which that's all things that are reality to humanity. So in order for that ego structure of the 5 to stay intact, in order to avoid incompetency, emptiness, and emotional intensity, it must connect, and it has the defense mechanism of detachment or isolations. Different schools will have different words, but it's either detachment or isolation. And that third point is a triangle pointing down because this is not healthy for the type 9. Okay. This is something that they have to look at and work on and pay attention to because it's stopping them from growing. And so this is really slippery. And so the definition for isolation and detachment for the Enneagram 5's defense mechanism is a pattern of withdrawing emotionally from people and going straight into intellectualism with their head, isolating and detaching themselves from the other person or people along with themselves. This can take form in many different ways within themselves physically, from situations that cause them to feel emotionally uncomfortable or intellectually incompetent. And this also looks like if a 5 is present, energetically removing themselves from the situation, meaning that they're not really engaging with those who they are around or people near them. So what does this look like? This can look like possibly a 5 being a part of a group, but never really being a part of the group. And what I mean by that is that they are a part of it, as in they attend certain things, but anything that would require them actually becoming a little bit more emotionally involved, divulging a little bit more of themselves or just a little bit more of their energy, they can have a tendency to say no to or find a way to avoid doing it or being part of it. So that's one way that the defense mechanism of isolation and detachment can actually look for a 5. It can also look like someone who's there with someone. We're in a pandemic right now as I'm recording this, and being around a person, but they're not actually engaging with the people with their hearts in the small space that they're in or that big space they're in, depending on where they live, the house. It can look like they're there, but they're not engaging them necessarily with their heart. They are there, but they're just not engaging them with their heart. And so that can look like a many different ways, but maybe only on an intellectual level. And so that is one thing. And it's really slippery for 5s for sure, because you think about it. 5s naturally want to be able to have space to withdraw so they can recharge, so they can get energy, so they can like come back and be that. The issue is noticing the difference of when you're withdrawing to get energy so that you can be amongst other people or communities or groups. And the difference between when that happens or when you are literally withdrawing completely emotionally from a situation or detaching emotionally because there's something associated, there's a fear and there's an avoidance of something that make you feel that you could be incompetent or that you not know about, or something that may be emotionally really strong and or uncomfortable. So that is what 5s have to be aware of, is that they're looking at the situation and seeing if, like, am I pulling away to recharge and then I re-engage with people and I'm still engaging with my heart, which is still work for the 5. But, there's a difference between, doing that and actually just fully withdrawing from people and like fully just not engaging with your heart with people and communicating and connecting. So that is some ways that it can look like for a 5. So be very aware of 5 because it's a tricky place. Does your workplace stink because the culture sucks? Are you tired of tolerating people and wish you could all work together cohesively? Does going to work give you instant anxiety? If you say yes to any one of these, you should probably quit your job. But since you aren't going to quit your job, you should call Kaizen Careers. At Kaizen Careers, we are all about improving personal and workplace performance. We use a unique tool called the Enneagram. The Enneagram helps individuals and organizations become more self-aware. That self-awareness lends into helping organizations with communication, leadership, and conflict management, ultimately turning self-awareness into self-mastery and creating healthy workplace performance so you can improve your services and bottom line. You can reach Kaizen Careers at kaizencareers.com or 901-334-1644. How do you counteract this defense mechanism? So what's so interesting about the defense mechanisms, you can do the opposite thing and actually help yourself out. If it is isolating, then instead of isolating and detaching, you can actually choose moments to engage your body and emotions. So this can look like, for instance, say that, hey, I'm going to call such and such tomorrow at 3 p.m. Or it could be visiting an emotional place internally or with someone and journal about it. So watch something that brings up beautiful emotions inside of you, something that might be a tearjerker. Don't just sleep on it and just plan it. do it. Actually do it. So this is one of the ways, is actually choosing a way to engage as a five. Instead of just looking for ways to think about different things, what can you do to engage your heart and your body to some other group or to some other people? So if you are virtual, there's tons of online groups that you can probably be a part of. And even groups that you don't have to necessarily, it's like purely based on logic and being on right or facts or research or information necessarily, which is still good for fives to engage in that way if you're not engaged in that way. But finding somewhere and somehow you can engage with your heart is going to do wonders and really truly help you to develop and feel the expanse of life, and not just understand it from a headspace, but experience it. Because that is the scariest part, I think, for the five, is that they may understand and like can think through it, but they don't experience it because it's all in their head. So definitely doing that is definitely one of the ways to counteract that isolation and detachment. And another way is, because we're in the head center right now with the five, question yourself. Questions are powerful, right? And fives are great at them. So am I actively isolating or detaching myself to avoid something? That's a great question to ask yourself. So am I actively isolating or detaching myself to avoid something? And you really have to look at this, because sometimes with fives and especially sevens, they may not be really in touch with their fear. Different things that they fear, because they may see fear as being scared and not doing anything. But fear comes in many different ways, and we respond to them in many interesting ways. And fives and sevens, they avoid them in different ways. Fives tend to go to their heads, while sevens tend to flee with their bodies and do different things. So for the five, it's very important to make sure that if you see yourself fleeing to your head more extensively than usual, then that could be an indicator that you might be isolating or detaching yourself. And that avoidance and that fear could be around truly engaging fully with your emotions and sometimes yourself physically. So those are two ways to kind of counteract the defense mechanism of isolation and detachment. And it's just so very important that fives break past this one. Because if you're listening to this and you love the Enneagram, but you're not really part of an Enneagram community, I implore you, I urge you to get in an Enneagram community. We need more fives in Enneagram communities. Fives and threes, to the most part, tend to be the types that are the least in a lot of Enneagram groups and communities, and we need more fives in these groups so bad. For a lot of different reasons, because you bring something that all the other numbers don't bring, first and foremost, but also even for your own personal growth and development. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of different Enneagram groups, and it stretches you and shows you you're more dynamic, and you experience life at such a rich level that you may have felt before, but there's other levels to it that you can really express and feel, that I think is just so important for you to be able to be a part of, for sure. It's just an amazing place to have Enneagram communities, I promise you. So hopefully someone listening who is a five is like, let me join one of these Enneagram communities he's talking about, because we would love to have you more and more. Oh my goodness. All right. So besides that, that's all I have to this episode. Short, quick, to the point. One of the things, if you're thinking about joining a group, some of the groups you can join, the IEA is actually developing Ennea groups. And right now there's only 4, but it's going to be exploding to many more. And these Ennea groups, the original 4, are made to really help develop some unity and community within marginalized communities who are part of the Enneagram, who may not have like necessarily a safe space, in a space to really express, like a community to really like build their Enneagram identity and what's going on with them. So right now, there's 4 Ennea groups, different ones. One is BIPOC, one is anti-racism, one is LGBTQ+, one is POCs who are not Black. So it's like people of color who are not Black. So those are the first 4 groups, but there's a ton of different Enneagram communities out there, I'm telling you, and quite a few really, 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 really good ones. So those are just 4 that are coming up really soon that I did want to share with you all. Besides that, I do want to tell you about My new program coming up in August. It is the Kaizen Complete Enneagram program, and it's an Enneagram community where we learn about the Enneagram in community. I'm only taking 20 people because I want the community to be at a size that we can really do growth, we can really learn. Everyone has a voice and time to speak, and that there's not too many people where you don't really get to know certain people. So you're going to get to know everyone in the group, but also feel supported and be able to learn, but also experience the Enneagram in a lot of different ways. The cohort I have going on now, absolutely phenomenal people in it. And it's some absolutely amazing epiphanies happening, growth and everything. So I absolutely love it. Yeah, and then also stay aware of what's happening on my social media pages at Do It For The Gram Podcast and at Kaizen Careers, because there is something amazing coming out March 15th, and I'm excited for that. So stay tuned to that. There's also a free ebook. Want to drop that in here too. There's a free ebook. If you go to kaizencareers.com and you find ebook, you click on the link that says Enneagram, you click ebook. There's a free ebook there with some career kind of information. Short, sweet, to the point, practical. You know, that's how I do it. So I'm super excited about that. If you are interested in all those, please check them out. And besides that, for the wonderful Enneagram 5s, if you feel yourself going into isolation or detachment, then I implore you to take a deep breath and make a wise move and do it for the gram. Make a better choice. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.